If I woke up tomorrow and forgot everything that I knew about lifting weights and about anatomy, and I could only remember one single concept, this would be it. This is a concept that is so simple and yet so powerful that if you can understand anything about it, you'll understand a lot more than a lot of people do about how to properly lift weights. And if you're a coach or a trainer or a therapist, how to actually coach other people to lift in the way that you want them to. All right, so what is this concept? I'm gonna first give you the short answer, and then those of you who are interested in the nuance, you stick around for the longer answer. The short answer is simply understanding circles. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, if you take a circle and you cut it in half, that makes a semicircle. If you take an oval and you cut it in half, that makes a semi-oval. And in both cases, whenever you take any part of a circle or oval apart, you form what's called an arc. And why are arcs important? Well, the human body moves in arcs. So if you look at my hand is actually moving in an arc. Why? Well, because my elbow is causing my forearm to rotate around my upper arm such that my hand is actually pivoting. If you could follow my hand all the way around, if my hand could go through my biceps, down the other way, all around, it's actually forming a circle. And so when we look at our major moving joints, our elbow, our shoulder, our knee, our ankle, our hip, all those joints move in arcs. So to understand each individual lift and to be able to coach lifts to other people, if you don't understand arcs, then you don't really understand how the human body actually moves. All right, so here's a really simple example that I'm going to use with my skeleton to illustrate how an arc can be so impactful. Have you ever done a triceps extension where you're doing the extension and all is well through the top portion of the range, whether it's you or a client, but toward the bottom you have a tendency to do this, right? It's like the first half of the motion looks like this thing of beauty, of art, and the minute that you start to get close to the bottom, all of a sudden everything goes whack, whack. And so the whole motion ends up turning into this weird like half, dip, half triceps extension thing. Why does that occur? Well, it's because of a misunderstanding of this arc concept. Let me show you. Okay, so this is the elbow joint, and the elbow joint basically just moves like a wrench around a bolt, right? It's the example I gave earlier. And when someone is doing a triceps extension, their hand is moving through space in an arc, right? Just imagine that direction of motion, that semicircle that we talked about earlier. In the top half of the range, look at the direction that the hand is moving. The hand is basically just moving in a straight line up to down. But there's a certain point in this range of motion at which the hand will stop moving downward and it will actually start moving where? Backward. And if you did a full range of motion triceps extension, look at where the hand is moving initially. It's actually moving forward away from the chest, right? From here to here, it's moving away from the body. And then it starts to move down, right, toward the floor. And then again, it moves backward. So from the beginning to the end of the motion, you're literally moving in opposite directions. From here to here, you're moving forward, and you're moving down for a bit, and then you're moving backward behind the body. And so what happens, why do people do this dumping thing? Well, because in this top portion of the range, the motion of the hand is down, right? But if the individual does not understand the fact that the hand can only be taken backward by the elbow beyond a certain point, what they will do is they will continue to use the intent of down, down, down. And this is not something that's really conscious, but if you're not thinking about this concept clearly, what you're not going to be able to do is go through this entire range of motion and get a full range of contraction and isolation of the triceps, because again, you're not thinking about the direction that the hand is actually moving. So this is not some hooky pooky concept. It's basically just where the hell is the hand actually moving, and how do I actually understand what the function of the triceps is in relation to that, right? Because the triceps are not going to push the shoulders down like this. And so if you continue to think downward toward the floor only in this initial portion of the arc, then you're going to have to use muscles and motions that are capable of doing that. Again, from this position, the only thing the triceps are capable of doing is pulling the hand from here to here backward. So again, if you continue to just think about this downward portion of the motion and the triceps can't continue to push the hand in that direction, something else will. So a really simple solution is to actually understand and cue yourself to know, okay, where's the hand moving? So in the top portion of the range, the hand is moving down. And then at a certain point, again, you're gonna have to round that corner to move backward. So if you're doing a triceps extension, you're thinking to yourself, okay, I'm just kind of pushing down at the initiation. That's not too hard to conceptualize and think about. But then toward the bottom end of the range where I'm gonna have to squeeze, I'm gonna be driving my hand behind my body, right? And now let's think about how this might apply to a curl. Where do people struggle in curls? Say, cable curl, dumbbell curl, is they typically struggle in the top portion of the range. What happens in the top portion of the range? Well, if at the bottom the hand is kind of just moving forward, then it's moving upward. What's happening at the tail end? The hand is actually moving backward, right? It's just the reverse of the triceps extension problem we just talked about, or a potential problem. And so when the hand comes up, 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 toward the top, and it's actually moving back toward the shoulder, a lot of people don't think to themselves, oh, I'm curling up and then back. They just think I'm curling up. But the biceps cannot pull the arm upward in any kind of meaningful way. If I just continue to think upward toward the ceiling, again, what do people do? They get to a certain point, and then instead of thinking backward here, they just drag their entire shoulder upward and forward like this, and they end up just finishing the range of motion with their front delt mostly. So why does this matter so much? Well, because this arcing concept applies to all joints in your body, and therefore it applies to pretty much every exercise that you can possibly do in some way or another. So for example, imagine you're sitting down and you're doing a leg extension. Watch the direction of the foot. The direction of foot is forward in the bottom and then upward in the top. If you don't understand that your foot needs to travel upward, then you're gonna have a really tough time actually cueing yourself to understand that, okay, to finish this motion, my quads pull my foot toward the ceiling. So in the leg extension, you think foot forward in the bottom, foot upward toward the ceiling in the top. And the same thing on the way down, the foot is still moving in a vertical direction, so you're still thinking push up, push up, push up, push up, allow the heel to come back, 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 back. Think about a lying leg curl. So how do people screw this one up? Well, they come out of the bottom just fine, but the minute that their foot starts to travel this way, all of their butt and everything hikes up, everyone's hips move off the seat, their spinal erectors start feeling tighter because they're basically just trying to pull themselves up with anything and everything they can, instead of simply just understanding this concept of, okay, my foot and my heel, it's moving up, but then at some point I have to round the corner and now my heel has to come directly upward toward the skull. And then, oh, at the very top of the range of motion, the heel actually has to come back down to the butt, right? So it's like, much like in the same way we talked about the curl and the extension, you're thinking to yourself, foot up, foot horizontal, foot down. And more than likely, you're just gonna have to really pick that tail end of the range, because this portion of the range is very intuitive for people. You're just kicking the pad upward, you have a direct support underneath of you, but toward the end portion of the range is where it becomes really important to imagine driving your heel straight downward into your pelvis so that all that hip hiking and spine hiking stuff doesn't occur. Now, even in something like a bench press where you might not think about this as a kind of arcing motion, just focus on motion of this bone. This is the major moving loaded bone in this exercise, the upper arm. Well, watch what's happening if you just focus on the elbow. The elbow kind of moves up toward the ceiling, and then at the top, the elbow moves inward again in basically an arc of what you can sort of imagine as just a pec fly. It moves upward in the bottom and then inward toward the chest at the top. And so why do people, you think, actually struggle so much not to focus on the bottom portion of the press, but the top portion of the press where they're shrugging everything forward, trying to reach round their back toward the ceiling? Well, it's because they're not actually concentrated on pressing the elbow in the arc that it's supposed to move, again, up from the bottom and in toward the top. So if people then understand that, like, okay, my shoulders are moving inward at the top, they don't have this temptation to over-round, overreach, and do all that weird stuff. They just imagine driving their biceps into the chest so that they can complete the range of motion with the bone they're trying to. So apply this information today or tomorrow when you lift. Just think about the motion that you're doing and ask yourself, okay, what direction are my bones actually pivoting within the range that I'm using? Are they pivoting upward at a particular moment? Are they pivoting backward toward me? Because those are very, very different things. And if you understand the physics of motion, the physics of exercise, then you don't need to make guesses about what you need to be thinking about. You can just ask yourself, where am I trying to move my bones? And what mental cues, what mental directions should I use to be able to move my bones in those directions at those particular times in each exercise? And interestingly, a lot of the problems that people think that they have, a weak this, a tight this, an immobile this, actually just relate to a poor understanding of how bones are moving in each scenario and how you should think about how bones are moving in each scenario. So I hope this video helps. If it did and you want to learn more from me, check the links in the description below, and I will see you all in the next one.